The Silent Corridors. The Life of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. The story begins in the heart of a London winter. It was the 19th of February, 1960. Inside the Belgian suite of Buckingham Palace, the air was thick with the weight of history and the quiet anticipation of a nation. At 3:30 in the afternoon, a son was born to Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. They named him Andrew Albert Christian Edward. His arrival was a landmark in the story of the House of Windsor. Not since 1857, during the long reign of Queen Victoria, had a child been born to a reigning British monarch. For a country still navigating the complexities of the post-war world, Andrew represented a new chapter of stability. He was the spare to his brother Charles's heir, born second in the line of succession, a position he would hold for 22 years. As you imagine those early days, picture the vast, high-ceilinged nurseries of the palace. His early life was a tapestry of tradition. He was overseen by a governess, Catherine Peebles, who had also taught his elder brother. The world outside was changing. The 1960s were beginning to roar, but inside the palace walls, life moved with a steady, rhythmic discipline. As the young prince grew, his education moved away from the gilded rooms of London. He followed a path set by his father, a man who believed in the temporine power of the elements. After a time at Heatherdown Preparatory School, Andrew was sent north to the rugged, salt-sprayed coast of Moray in Scotland. Gordonstown was more than a school, it was a philosophy. Here the North Sea wind was a constant companion. The curriculum emphasized physical endurance, seamanship, and community service. It was during these years that Andrew's personality began to crystallize. His peers remembered him for a boisterous sense of humor and a certain competitive streak. He spent time as an exchange student in Canada at Lakefield College School, where he paddled canoes through the quiet glass-like waters of Ontario, further deepening his connection to the natural world. By the time he reached adulthood in 1979, the sea was calling. He entered the Britannia Royal Naval College at Dartmouth. He was not there as a guest of honor, but as a midshipman. He was learning the language of the waves, the intricacies of flight, and the heavy responsibility of command. By 1981, he had earned his wings as a helicopter pilot, specializing in the Sea King, a massive twin-engine aircraft that would soon carry him into the pages of history. The year 1982 changed everything. In the early spring, the news broke that Argentina had invaded the Falkland Islands. A task force was assembled, and among the ships prepared for the long journey south was the aircraft carrier HMS Invincible. Andrew was a sub-lieutenant on board. There was a quiet but intense debate in the halls of government. Some feared the propaganda victory an enemy would gain if a prince were captured or killed. They suggested he be moved to a desk job in London. But the Queen remained resolute. Her son had trained for this. He would serve alongside his shipmates. The journey south was long and cold. As the fleet entered the total exclusion zone, the reality of war settled over the Invincible. Andrew flew mission after mission through the thick Antarctic fog. He served as a Sea King co-pilot, tasked with casualty evacuations and search and rescue. Perhaps most bravely, he flew decoy missions. In these moments, helicopters were used to hover near the fleet, attempting to confuse the guidance systems of incoming Exocet missiles, drawing the danger toward themselves to protect the larger ships. When the conflict ended and the Invincible returned to Portsmouth in July, the image of the prince returning home, a rose held between his teeth as he waved to the crowds, became an icon of the era. He was the hero of the hour, a young man who had proven his mettle in the freezing gales of the South Atlantic. The mid-80s were a time of celebration. In July 1986, the streets of London were lined with people once more for his wedding to Sarah Ferguson at Westminster Abbey. On that day, the Queen created him the Duke of York, a title traditionally held by the sovereign's second son. For a few years, the Yorks were the vibrant, informal face of the monarchy. They had two daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie. Yet the pressures of royal life and long separations during Andrew's naval service took their toll. The quiet stability of the palace began to fracture. They separated in 1992, a year the Queen famously called her annus horribilis, and finally divorced in 1996. Remarkably, they remained close friends, continuing to share a home at the Royal Lodge in Windsor, a testament to a complex but enduring bond. Andrew's naval career continued in the background. He commanded the mine hunter HMS Cottesmore and eventually rose to the rank of commander. However, as the new millennium approached, his role was shifting. In 2001, after 22 years of service, he hung up his flight suit. He moved into a new arena: international trade. As the UK's Special Representative for International Trade and Investment, Andrew travelled the world. He was a door opener for British business, moving through the boardrooms of the Middle East, Asia, and America. He was a man of the world, but it was during this time that he formed the associations that would eventually lead to his downfall. His friendship with the American financier Jeffrey Epstein began in the late 1990s. For years, it was a quiet detail in his social life. But as the 21st century progressed, the shadow of Epstein's crimes began to grow. By 2011, photos of Andrew walking with Epstein in New York's Central Park surfaced, leading to his resignation from the trade envoy role. The situation remained a slow-burning fire until 2019, when a televised interview intended to clear his name had the opposite effect. The public reaction was swift and unforgiving. Within days, he announced he was stepping back from public duties for the foreseeable future. The charities he championed began to distance themselves, and the royal spotlight he had lived in since birth began to dim. The final years of the Queen's reign were marked by a painful distancing. In early 2022, following legal developments in a civil case in the United States, the Queen took the historic step of removing Andrew's military affiliations and royal patronages. He settled the civil lawsuit without an admission of liability, but the damage to his public standing was absolute. He ceased to use the style His Royal Highness in any official capacity. When King Charles III ascended the throne, the process of formalizing this new reality accelerated. In October 2025, a momentous announcement came from Buckingham Palace. The king had moved to strip his brother of his remaining royal styles. He would no longer be known as the Duke of York, or as a Prince of the United Kingdom. He became simply Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. The physical symbols of his life changed too. He was asked to vacate the Royal Lodge, the grand mansion in Windsor Great Park that had been his sanctuary for decades. He relocated to Wood Farm, a modest, secluded farmhouse on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, the same house where his father had spent his quietest final years. We now reach the present day. As of late February 2026, the story of Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor is undergoing its most dramatic and somber chapter yet. Following the release of a massive cache of documents from the American legal system earlier this year, authorities in the United Kingdom opened a fresh criminal investigation. The focus is on allegations of misconduct in public office during his years as a trade envoy, specifically concerning reports sent to Jeffrey Epstein. On the 19th of February 2026, the very day he turned 66, Andrew was arrested by Thames Valley Police at his home in Sandringham. He was taken to a local station and questioned for 11 hours. It was a moment without precedent in the modern history of the monarchy. He was released under investigation, a legal status that remains in place as the police continue their work. In London, the atmosphere is one of profound transition. The British government has confirmed it is now considering primary legislation to remove him from the line of succession, where he currently sits in 8th place. King Charles has issued a brief, firm statement. The law must take its course. As the sun sets over the quiet fields of Norfolk, the man who was once the golden boy of the Falklands sits in a farmhouse far from the gilded corridors of his birth. The echoes of his past, the rotors of the Sea King, the cheers of the wedding crowds have faded into a heavy silence. The story continues, moving now away from the pages of royal history and into the